Medieval gardens grew over 100 different vegetables. Your grocery store carries about 30. And most of those 30 are the same plant bred into different shapes. Broccoli, cauliflower, kale, Brussels sprouts and cabbage are all the same species, wearing a different costume. 7 vegetables that fed Europe for centuries have been quietly pushed out of seed catalogues, removed from commercial farming, and in some cases made illegal to sell as food. Not because they failed, because they couldn't be shipped, stored, or mass-produced fast enough to make corporations money. These plants grew in poor soil, survived frost, fought off pests without chemicals, and delivered nutrition that modern vegetables can't touch. They thrived in conditions that would kill the weak, water-dependent crops lining your produce aisle today. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why the most powerful plants in European history were replaced by the most fragile ones, and how you can grow them yourself. Number 1. Skirret. Here's a root vegetable that was the centerpiece of medieval feasts, served at royal banquets across England and France for 400 years, and you've probably never heard its name. Skirret, a cluster of white finger-sized roots that taste sweet enough to eat raw. No sugar added, no cooking required. Medieval writers described the flavor as a cross between parsnip and sweet potato, but sweeter than both. The plant is a perennial. That means you plant it once and it comes back every year. You don't replant. You don't buy new seed. You just harvest what you need and leave the rest to keep growing. Medieval kitchen gardens kept skirret patches for decades. One planting fed a family for a generation. The roots grow in clusters of 8 to 12 fingers, each about 15 to 20 centimeters long. You pull the cluster, snap off what you need, and replant the crown. It grows back. No tilling, no rotation, no bare soil sitting empty between seasons. So why don't we grow it anymore? The roots are thin and tangled. They can't be harvested by machine. A combine doesn't know what to do with a cluster of 12 small roots when it's built to pull one big carrot out of the ground. Skirret requires hands, and hands cost money. For your garden, skirret is one of the easiest perennial vegetables you can grow. It handles partial shade, poor soil, and cold winters down to USDA Zone 5. Plant the crown once in spring, and you'll be harvesting sweet roots every autumn for years. That's a system designed to produce food forever. Number 2. Good King Henry. Walk into any medieval English village between the 1200s and the 1600s, and you'd find this plant growing next to every cottage door. Good King Henry, a leafy green that acted as spinach, asparagus, and broccoli, all in one plant. The young shoots in spring were cut and eaten like asparagus. The leaves through summer were cooked like spinach. The flower buds were steamed like broccoli. 3 vegetables from one plant that nobody had to water, fertilize, or protect from frost. Good King Henry is a perennial. It comes back every year, stronger than the year before. It grows in the worst soil imaginable: clay, rocky ground, compacted paths next to buildings. It actually prefers soil that's been walked on and packed down. Try growing modern spinach in those conditions. It won't even germinate. A 2019 study from the University of Ljubljana in Slovenia analysed the nutritional profile of Good King Henry leaves. They found it contained 30% more iron than modern spinach, significantly higher levels of calcium, and a broader range of B vitamins. The plant medieval villagers treated as a common weed was more nutritious than the spinach you pay $4 a bag for. The reason it disappeared is simple. Good King Henry grows slowly. You can't harvest the leaves until the 2nd year. Modern agriculture needs crops that go from seed to shelf in 45 days. A plant that asks for patience doesn't fit that model. For your garden, Good King Henry is the ultimate low-effort green. plant it in a neglected corner, ignore it for a year, then harvest leaves, shoots and flower buds from the same patch for 10 to 15 years without replanting. Your grocery store spinach wilts in 3 days. This plant produces for a decade. Number 3. Alexanders. Before celery arrived from Italy in the 1700s, every kitchen in Northern Europe used a different plant for the same job. Alexanders. A tall, dark-stemmed plant that tastes like celery mixed with parsley, but stronger and more complex. The Romans brought it to Britain. It grew wild along coastlines and near monastery walls for over 1,000 years. Every part of the plant was edible. The stems were blanched and eaten like celery. The leaves went into soups and stews. The roots were roasted. Even the flower buds were pickled. Here's what makes Alexanders remarkable from a growing standpoint. It handles salt spray, coastal wind, and chalky soil that kills most garden vegetables. It's a biennial, 2 years from seed to full harvest. But once it's established, it self-seeds so freely that medieval monastery records describe having to control its spread rather than encourage its growth. When celery was introduced as a commercial crop, it replaced Alexanders almost overnight. Not because celery tasted better, because celery could be grown in rows, harvested by machine, and shipped without wilting as fast. Alexanders have hollow stems that bruise easily. They don't stack in crates. They don't survive a truck ride from farm to warehouse to store. In 2013, the University of Reading's Archaeology Department published research on medieval monastic gardens. They documented Alexanders as one of the 5 most common vegetables in English monastery kitchen gardens between the 10th and 15th centuries. 500 years of daily use erased by a plant that ships better in a box. For your garden, Alexander seed is still available from heritage seed companies. It grows in partial shade, tolerates poor soil, and once established, comes back on its own every year through self-seeding. You get a celery substitute that's hardier, more flavourful, and completely free after the first planting. Number 4. Scorzonera. Here's a vegetable that medieval physicians prescribed as medicine and medieval cooks served as a main course. Both of them were right. Scorzonera, also called black salsify or the viper's root. A long, thin, black-skinned root that, when peeled and cooked, tastes so much like oysters that it earned the name oyster plant across 5 European languages. The root can reach 30 centimetres long and grows straight down into the ground, breaking up compacted soil as it grows. Medieval farmers used it as a rotation crop specifically because it improved the soil for whatever came next. The deep taproot pulled minerals up from layers that shallow-rooted crops couldn't reach. When the root was harvested, it left behind channels that helped water drain into heavy clay. But the real story is what's inside the root. Scorzonera contains one of the highest concentrations of inulin found in any vegetable. Inulin is a prebiotic fibre, food for the good bacteria in your gut. A 2017 study from Wageningen University in the Netherlands measured inulin content in 40 common root vegetables. Scorzonera topped the list at 20% inulin by dry weight. That's more than chicory root, which is the industrial source most prebiotic supplements are made from. Medieval physicians in the 1300s and 1400s prescribed Scorzonera for digestive complaints and general weakness. They didn't know the word inulin, but they observed that people who ate it regularly had fewer stomach problems and recovered from illness faster. Centuries of observation confirmed exactly what modern science now measures in a lab. For your garden, Scorzonera is a perennial that can be left in the ground over winter and harvested as needed. Frost actually makes it sweeter. It grows in any soil, handles drought, and produces food while improving the ground around it. Your store-bought celery does none of those things. Number 5. Rampion. Here's a vegetable so valued in medieval Germany that it inspired one of the most famous fairy tales ever written. The Brothers Grimm story of Rapunzel isn't named after a girl. It's named after a plant. Rapunzel is the German word for rampion. In the original story, a pregnant woman craves rampion growing in the witch's garden so badly that her husband steals it, and the witch takes their child as payment. That's how important this vegetable was. It was worth risking everything for. Rampion is a biennial with a white turnip-like root and edible leaves. The root was eaten raw in salads or cooked like a mild radish. The leaves were used like lettuce. Medieval German and French kitchen gardens grew it as a winter salad vegetable, one of the few fresh foods available during the cold months when everything else had been stored or preserved. The plant grows through cold weather that would destroy modern lettuce. It handles frost, light snow, and short days without bolting or going bitter. For medieval families, it was reliable fresh food in February when the root cellar was running low and spring was still weeks away. German monastery records from the 1400s list rampion as a required planting in every kitchen garden. The monks understood that without it, there was no fresh food between November and March. That's 4 months of the year where rampion was the only green thing on the table. Rampion disappeared because it's slow. The root takes a full year to reach edible size. Modern radishes are ready in 25 days. The market doesn't wait for a root that needs 12 months when it can sell one that needs 3 weeks. Speed killed rampion the same way it killed every other slow-growing medieval crop. For your winter garden, rampion fills a gap that almost nothing else can. Sow in spring, ignore it all summer, and harvest fresh leaves and crisp roots in the coldest months from a plant that shrugs off conditions your lettuce can't survive. Heritage seed catalogues still carry it. The Brothers Grimm thought it was worth a child. It's at least worth a row in your garden. Number 6. Salsola. This one sounds impossible until you see the records. Medieval farmers in coastal Spain, southern France, and Italy grew a vegetable in salt marshes, beach sand, and soil so salty that no modern crop would even sprout. Salsola soda, commonly called agretti or barilla, a succulent grass-like plant with crunchy stems that taste like salty green beans with a mineral bite. The plant thrives in saline soil. It doesn't just tolerate salt, it absorbs it. The stems are naturally salty because the plant pulls sodium out of the ground and stores it in its tissue. Medieval farmers used this to their advantage. They grew agretti on ruined, salt-contaminated land and used the plant to clean the soil. After a few seasons of agretti, the ground could support other crops again. This is called phytoremediation, using plants to fix damaged soil. Modern environmental scientists use this technique with expensive engineered programs. Medieval Mediterranean farmers did it with a food crop that they ate for dinner and then sold the ash to glass makers. The burned plant produced soda ash, sodium carbonate, which was the key ingredient in Venetian glassmaking for centuries. One plant. It fed the family, healed the soil, and created an industrial product, all without irrigation, fertilizer, or anything from a store. That's 3 revenue streams from a single crop growing on land that everyone else considered worthless. The reason it vanished from mainstream farming is the same story as every other plant on this list. Agretti doesn't ship. The stems start losing their crunch within hours of picking. There's no way to package it, truck it across a country, and sell it 5 days later still looking fresh. It's a harvest and eat today vegetable in a system built around harvest and sell next week. For coastal gardeners or anyone dealing with salty or alkaline soil, Agretti seed is available from Italian specialty seed companies. It grows fast, 40 to 50 days from seed, and it's one of the only food crops on earth that actually performs better in bad soil than good. Number 7. Aurak. This last one isn't just another forgotten vegetable, it's the plant that shows you how far we've fallen. Aurak, also called mountain spinach, a tall, striking plant with leaves that come in deep red, purple, gold and green. It was the most common cooking green in Europe before spinach replaced it in the 1700s, not because spinach was better, but because spinach was more convenient. Aurak grows to 2 meters tall. A single plant produces more edible leaf material than an entire row of modern spinach. The leaves don't bolt and turn bitter in hot weather the way spinach does. They don't wilt after picking the way store-bought greens do. And the plant handles heat, drought, frost and poor soil that modern spinach simply can't survive. Nutritional testing by the Institute of Food Research in Norwich found that red aurak contains higher levels of beta-lane antioxidants than beetroot. The same compounds that make beets good for blood pressure and inflammation are concentrated in aurak leaves at higher levels, and you can eat them raw. Medieval farmers grew aurak as a self-seeding annual. You plant it once, it drops seed. Next year it comes back on its own. The year after that, more. Within 3 seasons, you have a permanent patch of cooking greens that requires nothing from you. No watering, no feeding, no replanting, no trips to the store. Spinach replaced aurak because spinach is small, uniform, and fits in a plastic bag. Aurak is tall, wild-looking, and impossible to standardize. The produce aisle needs vegetables that look identical. Aurak looks different every time. That was its death sentence in the commercial world. And it's exactly what makes it superior in yours. Every plant we've covered today shares something in common. They're perennials or aggressive self-seeders. They fix soil instead of draining it. They survive frost, drought, and neglect. And they deliver nutrition that the pale, water-dependent crops in your grocery store can't match. Medieval gardeners understood vegetables as part of a complete system. Skirret fed the family while holding the soil together year after year. Scorzonera healed your gut while breaking up clay for the next crop. Agretti cleaned salt-poisoned land while feeding the household and supplying the glass maker. Nothing existed in isolation. Every plant served the garden, the kitchen, and the community at once. We traded that system for one that needs trucks, warehouses, plastic packaging, and a cold chain stretching thousands of miles, just to deliver spinach that wilts before you get it home. We traded plants that came back every year for plants you have to buy every season. We traded vegetables that thrived in bad soil for vegetables that need fertilizer, irrigation, and pesticides just to survive. We traded gardens that ran themselves for a produce aisle that runs on diesel fuel. The question isn't whether medieval vegetables were better. A plant that feeds you for 15 years from one planting while improving the soil it grows in speaks for itself. The question is whether you're willing to grow what the seed catalogue stopped selling. If you're ready to take your garden back from the system that made it dependent, hit that subscribe button. We're digging up forgotten growing knowledge every week. Drop a comment and tell me which of these 7 plants you're putting in the ground first. These plants don't need your grocery store. They don't need your fertilizer. They don't need a truck to bring them to you. They need dirt, rain, and someone who remembers they exist.